talking about opportunity scoring and how to create a schema, we were exploring that you want to be able to determine what is an opportunity and is it sales ready. And we discussed two key dimensions associated with opportunity scoring: fit and behavior. Today we're going to focus on behavior and show how these two dimensions work and play together. So behavior, let's be clear that we understand what a behavior is. It's an observable action. And when a customer puts together or understands what their buying process is, those basically are a series of incremental behavioral commitments that show that they are moving forward in their decision to buy. And so it's important to be able to map the customer buying process, and this is a key thing for companies that use marketing automation platforms or CRM, Salesforce automation platforms, because you want to be sure you configure them according to the customer buying process. That might mean that you might need different pipeline or different buying processes depending on different customer segments. So what we have here is an example of a customer buying pipeline and how you might set that up around behaviors. Oftentimes, a lot of companies use things like contact, suspect, prospect, qualified lead, or things like that. Interesting language internally, but doesn't really tell us much about where the customer is in their buying process. So let's think a little bit more around behavior. Here's an example of a customer buying a pipeline. Some of the opportunities that go into the pipeline are brought by marketing. Others might be brought directly by sales or the channel. Others might actually come from referrals from customers. And there is several stages in the pipeline or the customer buying process. First thing, we have contact, where we find out who they are and they find out who we are. Then there is connection, conversation, consideration, and ultimately, hopefully, if all's going well, consumption. They become a customer, and then hopefully they become a member of the community, and then they are buying more products from us more frequently and encouraging other companies or recommending other companies to buy from us, and that's how the cycle works. So think about the customer buying process and all the different behaviors associated. Then you can build out part of your behavior scoring schema. So let's take a look. Let's say somebody comes in and they do a follow or a fan, and maybe they subscribe to your email newsletter and give you their name. They're nothing more at that point than a contact. And so you would have criteria related to the contact stage, and each one of those behaviors that you've identified would be worth some number of points. So if it was subscribe, which would be a verb, and notice we're using verbs here based on behavior because a verb indicates an action, and that might be worth some number of points. Maybe that's worth 2 points. It's very early in the stage. There's no indication really of how likely they are going to be able to buy from us. They've just indicated, that they've made contact. And you might have each of these behaviors and they might be worth some number of points. So again, remember in our last conversation, we were talking about depending on what the agreement is between marketing and sales where that handoff occurs. If it's very early on and sales says, look, I want to know any fish swimming in the pond, we would look at our fit and we would say, look, we have somebody who's very high on the fit and has given us some contact, here's a fish. As opposed to as we look further into the buying process. So the next one being connection. That could be they come back, they download a document from us, maybe they attend a webinar or download some kind of audio conference. Any number of behaviors, again, that we would identify as connections. Maybe they download an analyst report or something along those lines. And so those behaviors would also be worth some number of points, probably more points. Again, remember, we're using sort of 1 through 10. So those behaviors, which are further into the pipeline, they might be worth more points because they're actually indicating a little bit more interest in what we have to offer. Maybe they actually even download information about our product. So maybe that's worth some number of 5 points. And we're looking at not only where they are in the pipeline, but how many of those behaviors they might actually be performing. So if this marketing and sales organization says, look, we want to have X number of behaviors, X number of points against this kind of minimum fit criteria, that is how you get to a schema. So again, if you had a conversation, right? So in this connection, maybe they downloaded something, maybe they've attended a webinar, maybe they've attended an online demo, so you've got maybe 15 points, plus some of these previous behaviors, and over here you might have as many as If you had 1 through 10, you can have maybe as many as 40 points or some number less. That would give you a way to think differently about your opportunities and which ones you want to invest in, have your salespeople really go and pursue, and which ones of those you're going to nurture through your marketing automation platforms, and then how you're going to nurture them. You know, depending again, the higher the fit and the further they are in their behaviors, might get some setup or some appropriate types of contact from your company versus lower fit opportunities much further back in the pipeline. So as you're going through, the more you have this agreement. So if the agreement is, look, once they get, you know, somewhere in this part of the conversation, they want a personal online demo, then that might be where you say they have X number of points, they've chatted with us, they've had a phone conversation with us, those things might be worth as much as 7 points each. They've done these previous things, they have high fit. So ultimately, if you're looking at it, you really end up with a two-dimension type of way to plot or actually score your opportunities. You have your fit ones and your behavior right, and as you're scoring them, you know, along the way, depending on what this number is here, those that are falling into, you know, this bucket, so to speak, that's the bucket of the highest, best qualified opportunities, the most sales-ready opportunities. You can figure out how you want to handle those, how you work with the sales team to move those through to conversion or wins, and then of course doing win-loss analysis for those that you lost because they had high fit, high behavior, so what happened, versus the low behavior, low fit ones, why invest a lot of energy, why spend a lot of energy marketing to them, versus those that have high behavior, low fit. What does that mean? Do you maybe have to explore a different product in your portfolio because what you have to offer is a little off, but you've got a lot of interest, versus high fit, low behavior? How do we move them? What kinds of things can we be doing on the marketing front to help grow or nurture the right relationships and the right behaviors from this, you know, very valuable group of opportunities? So that more or less is one way to do opportunity scoring using fit and behavior, and a way to create kind of an apples-to-apples comparison, so you and the sales teams, the marketing and sales teams, can actually be having a conversation around what you're really looking for and have real clarity around what is a qualified opportunity as opposed to some guesswork.